Hello, everyone. We're back, all gathered up for Series 10. I know many of you know the show, but if you don't know the show, All Gathered Up is a show that runs parallel with the Great British Sewing Bee to go into more detail of those techniques and skills that come up that they just don't have time to go into, because you know what it's like, especially at the beginning. There are 12 sewers. That's a lot of content to get through. And sometimes we don't get to see much sewing at all. And you're like, oh, what did they do there? Well, that's precisely what we can do on All Gathered Up. And for those who don't know, we can do it because we have this magnificent lady here, Carol Alayne, Master Tailor Couturier, to help us out. Don't we, Carol? Good to see you again, Carol.
Stuart, nice to see you again. How have you been?
I've been very well. It's been some time. I know I came to see you for a little bit during the year, but it has been some time. Been busy making. And
Oh
you?
my
I bet
gosh.
you've been busy too.
Yep. I have to say that Bespoke is busier than ever. It's
Fabulous.
almost too busy, but I feel really lucky, Stuart, because I think people want to invest wisely in their clothes now and really take time to think about what they're buying. And
Oh,
they want something original and they want to support, post COVID, I think put a lot of people in a different mood where they wanted to help smaller businesses, and I've been on the beneficiary end of that. I'm really grateful.
oh,
Mm.
wonderful. And you're so right. People investing in their own clothes. I'm getting well carried away with it. Look, can you see my garment back there?
It caught my eye. It's wonderful in red. It kind of says summertime to
Yeah,
me. What
summertime
is
in
it?
Italy too. And that's done by the couturier who lives in my village. You know Colin. You've heard of Colin, haven't you? Yeah. He
He
is.
crocheted
He
that.
crocheted it, yes. He crocheted it. I saw Sean Mendes wearing it, made by a company over in America. And I said, oh my word, can you do that, Colin? And he went, of course I can, darling. And he did it from looking at pictures.
That is amazing. Well, I know we can do that in tailoring, but I don't know how you people do that with a crochet hook. That is,
It's amazing. And
I must come to you for lessons.
it fits me a treat, so I'm really pleased. I've done a little bit of sewing. I've been doing some patchwork with my American friends. Look at this block, a lava lamp. Have you had a lava lamp in your time?
Oh, back in the 70s, that was the grooviest thing to own, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, this is really 70s, this one. Look at that. And I've got 12 blocks, all from people around America that I've met during COVID when we were doing a lot of Zoom. And it was like kind of a block swap. So I made 12 of these and sent them to all different places to America. And then I got 12 back. So I
Woohoo.
can't wait to sew all these together. This was done using foundation paper piecing.
I was going to say, that's not your traditional
No,
quilt shape.
no,
Uh,
it's not, and you can get way more sophisticated patterns and pictures using foundation paper piecing because it's that technique of folding on top of paper, sewing another seam, and then ripping the paper off. So you can get lots of intricate seams using foundation paper piecing. But it's a bit of one of those brain aches because you have to kind of sew upside down and look at the other way to turn it over and flip and iron. And I always get confused. I have to watch a few YouTube videos. But I've been busy sewing, and I'm sure you've been busy sewing too, haven't you? As well as your
oh,
all your private individuals coming for bespoke
and
stuff.
it's bridal season, and it's a lot of people want these boucle suits. So I've got several of these on the go right now. People go to Paris and they buy their boucle, and then they bring it to London, and then I make them kind of a Chanel
I,
inspired
I
suit.
could say it's
So
a Chanel tweed, isn't it? Or Chanel boucle. Yeah.
very close, very
Oh
close. So
wow.
people want to, bring that back into their wardrobe, which is really lovely.
And
Yeah.
you've emailed me
So
some pictures of some work that you've done as well, haven't you? Tell me
which
about
one would,
tell me
yeah.
about this magnificent work
Oh,
here.
now listen. This is a book that's just come out. I would encourage people to get this, put it in your library, because it's a lot of, it's women dressing women. So this goes through, it starts with early American, early French, the 1700s, all the way up to present day with, Sarah Burton and all the women designers in between, and
Oh,
Georgina
wow.
Godley. I've worked with her for 30 years. This is a really amazing piece. It's from her 70s Bumps and Lumps collection. And it was realizing the female form in reality, and its asymmetry and its sculptural form, and what happens to women as they age. That's that particular piece. We made two of them for the Met, and it's in their permanent collection.
Oh,
One in
wow.
white, one in black. Yeah, it was a real effort, that one, because it starts out with a carved padding piece, which
Oh,
I made
cool.
out of blocks of foam glued together and then cut with an electric knife,
Oh,
and got
wow. That's
big
like proper
box,
sculptural work.
proper sculpture, which is
Yeah.
what I am so into. And we talk about tailoring, we talk about silhouette, and it is all about sculpture. With bespoke, you have a person comes into your studio, they are a piece of sculpture in themselves, and then you put another sculpture on top. So yes, it's all very sculptural. Thank you for bringing this up, because I think this is a really good book for one's library.
Okay.
It's a traces history of women's involvement in the design field. It's a really lovely book.
And you know what? There's nothing better than having a proper book, is there? On your shelf that you can look at and read and hold. And
It, it,
and
yeah,
they're works of art themselves when you have all those books. It's lovely, isn't it? Fashion
yeah,
books,
they are.
big pictures.
Some clients that have been very, loyal to me. I've bought several copies and I've given them to them for their coffee tables, and they really.
Oh.
So thank you, Stuart.
Oh, you're welcome. It's lovely to be back. So, are you ready for 10 weeks, Carol?
Yeah, I am
Great.
ready. This was a tough first program to watch for a few reasons. I'm sure we'll get into
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I've got some samples ready to show you a little
Okay.
tutorial on top stitching, which we discussed.
Well, let's go into it then. So, week one, we had 12 sewers, and it was kind of a celebration episode to celebrate 10 series of the Sewing Bee. So, they went back to episode one for the pattern challenge and gave them an A-line skirt. But in episode one, the A-line skirt was, I think, 2 panels with a zip and maybe the option for it to be lined. And that was it. Now,
A lot.
move on 10 years, they've obviously thought, oh, we'll make it a bit, juiced it up a bit, because we can't do the same one again, which I think they could have done. But anyway, that's a discussion for later on. And they made this pattern piece where I think you had, I don't know, was it 8 panels or something? And then they needed to be sewn together, then top stitched, and then the waistband, and then the button band placket, and then 8 buttons.
Yeah, it was. It was painful to watch that, because it doesn't compare with the real world. I don't know who walked through this exercise, because that's what you should do
Yeah.
if you're going to set timings to, a novice, right? Somebody who's not a professional. You should walk through it and then maybe add a little bit of time. So I don't know how this compares to anything in the real world. It was so irrational to me to watch it. And when they said, you've got 3 hours and what
15 minutes. I think it was 15 minutes extra.
I thought I would never do that. And if I did, why would I do it? Why would
Yeah.
I? Anyway, we saw the results. Everybody struggled. It was painful.
It was. But we'll come to that, because what we normally do, viewers, for those who've never watched an All Gathered Up before, the techniques that we pull out from an episode, it may be from the pattern challenge, or it may be from the made to measure. Very rarely is it from the transformation challenge. And then what we'll do is, once we've looked at those techniques and Carol's given us wonderful words of wisdom and experience on how to do it, or a way. Remember, there are many ways of doing it. So this is one method of doing it.
Yeah, you Make it your own. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll then go to the back to the program and then we'll look at it. So we'll go through the tutorial with Carol now with top stitching, and then we'll go back into the pattern challenge and we'll then look at what they created and then talk about the skills and practice. So let's go straight to it then. Top stitching, Carol. Is it more than just decorative, or is it actually a decorative function?
It can be both.
Oh, okay.
It can be decorative, it can be functional. Two things to consider. Um, one is that the normal stitching guides that you have on your sewing machine, they disappear because you're working with larger pieces and you're sewing on the top. So those
Okay.
guides that you have to the right of your presser
Yeah.
foot, you can't see anymore. So you have to come up with another avenue, another compensation, and another guide that you have to make up. So that could be done with basting, chalk.
Oh, okay.
Um, you could even use what you people use in the quilting fraternity, which is you could set up a quilting bar
Yeah.
and set that parallel. But
This little
you can
arm.
tell us about that because I've never actually used one.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. You have to
Okay.
make another guide for yourself because you cannot see that anymore. And then the second thing to consider is that you are securing structure, you wanting to make everything very flat and very precise. So it's how to do that, how to set it up so that you get a very flat structure underneath, because what you're doing is enhancing that structure. It's building on it, and then it's
Ah,
decorating. So as you said, it's functional and decorative. So think about those two
okay.
things. And I've got some samples to show you if you're all ready.
Absolutely.
Go to
Uh,
the
Everything
cam.
seems to be working fine now. We did have a few gremlins in the system. For some of you, this might be deja vu, but we're all sorted. So we've got new technology and we've finally got it nailed. So let's go to Carol Cam. There we look at that. Hopefully, this technology should mean there is no what do we call it, lagging, or where it needed to render. So fingers crossed. Right, take it away,
Oh,
Carol.
thank you, Stuart. The first thing I'm going to say is when you're doing top stitching, make some samples, try it out. You're going to have to experiment with thread, with a needle, and with your tension. With your tension, you're going to have to loosen it and play around. I've got an upper tension and I've got a second tension bar. And sometimes all I have to do, let's see how I can simulate this. Sometimes you just have two wheels and you have a thread that's passing through. I'm just going to simulate this. Maybe this
Okay.
is your tension wheel. Sometimes all you have to do is take the thread out and put it back into the tension wheel. Sometimes that works
Ah,
instead of twiddling the knobs and tightening or loosening the tension. Okay, a little bit about top stitching thread. This is quite a thick one. This is a Gutermann and this is a 30 gauge. It's the thickest one that I would recommend to use. Here's another spool of top stitching thread, and this one is a 40 gauge. It's thinner. You can see that.
oh wow.
It's thinner.
Yeah.
Here is an even finer. Sometimes fine doesn't mean thin, but it's just a different composition. This is all silk top stitching thread.
Oh.
So I've done a sample here using all three.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the gauge of the thread is one thing, the tension we've discussed. The third thing is the size of your needle. Now, you need a larger needle for top stitching because you need the eye of the needle to be larger.
Yeah.
So I'm using a 16. Let's see, where is it? There
Yeah.
it
You're
is.
there. Perfect.
In a size 16. I'm using the Schmetz needle. And you can try this out with your thread and just see if you can thread that.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
It takes both. It takes both of the. It takes all three. So I'm going to select that size 16 for my sample. And if anything goes wrong, then I might adjust. I might
Yeah.
take a bigger, a smaller needle, whatever. So I've prepared a sample which I would encourage everyone to do. Now, the folks at the sewing bee, the contestants, didn't have time to do this. But I can assure you it does take time. And if you did it, it would steal some of that 3 hours and what did you say, 15 minutes?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so the first one is, this is done with a 40 gauge. Let's just bring that forward a little bit.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Oh, that's really nice.
It's a matte thread and I'm sewing it at 5 mil. What I said before about you losing your stitch gauge because you're sewing on the top and you're covering up that measurement to the right of your presser foot.
Yeah.
Your presser foot is actually a very handy guide that you can use to compensate for that. So if you're using a top stitching foot, then it's generally about a centimeter wide,
Okay.
and halfway through that presser foot is 5 mil. Now here's our thicker.
I love that one. Now that is what in my limited knowledge of top stitching, I've done a lot of quilting, and when you want the quilting to show, that's what I would go for.
You would go for the Gutermann. You would go for the 30 gauge.
Yeah, yeah.
Great choice. This one is the slightly
Oh,
iridescent.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's the gold color. So if I was going to do some jean work, altering jeans, and I didn't want that heavy look, I might choose something like this. This is a 100 gauge thread, but the 100 gauge thread speaks almost as clearly,
isn't it,
as the 40 gauge. So you see, you're just you just have to try things out. And thickness doesn't mean that it's going to speak better or not. So I'm going to show a couple more examples. This one here, we talk about making a alternative gauge to help you.
Yeah.
This sample here, I'm top stitching on both sides of the seam.
I love it.
Instead of pressing everything to one side like I did on that sample,
Yeah.
I'm pressing the seam open, flat.
Yeah.
This is a 3/4 inch seam, but on some patterns you're going to have a centimeter seam. You'll have enough room to top stitch at 5 mil. They did in the sewing bee this first session. But what I've done here is to help me, because I don't have my sewing gauge anymore.
No.
I've taken a rule, I've sharpened a piece of chalk, very sharp, and I've drawn myself a line right in the ditch.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, in the quilting world, we have the stitch in the ditch.
Stitch in the ditch, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we, Stuart.
Oh, cool.
Excellent. And so now you've got this, and so you can ride the edge of your presser foot along this white line as you go down and square up and come back. Okay?
Brilliant.
So this is one thing that you can do to have an alternative stitch guide for yourself. Now, I want to show you how to create a simple hem. This is like a jean hem.
Oh, yeah, at the bottom of my legs.
Yeah, the bottom of the legs, the hem on the legs.
Yeah.
So to start off, what I've done, I've marked where I want my hem to be.
Okay.
And that's this chalk line. So I've given myself about 3/4 inch, and I've sewn, using my top stitch thread, a guide stitch at about 5 millimeters, just a small 1/4 inch.
Yeah.
Then I press that as close to that guide stitch as I can get, so that I know that it's even.
Oh, lovely.
Okay.
And I presume when pressing that will press better because of that thread as well, won't it?
You're absolutely correct. Because you've got that, you can just roll this into the iron.
I love it.
And right there.
Yeah.
Until it's right there. And you can use your nails or you can use a pin to guide that. Get it nice and crisp right on the other side of that line. And then I've drawn, going back to the top side, which is where you always sew your top stitching, I've drawn a line at 1 centimeter. And then I've pressed it just beyond that line. Can you see that?
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely brilliant.
Okay. So now I know that if I turn it back to the top side, which is where you always sew, and I sew it at 1 centimeter, I'm going to be using this folded edge
Yeah.
is my guide. And that's the stitch gauge that you can see. So you don't have to invent a new one. And then stitch that line, and then by turning it back, you can see how
Oh,
accurate that
oh,
catches every.
you're a whisper away. That's incredible. See, now,
So that,
you've got to be brave to do that. I think I would cheat it and I would sew it that way, which I know is wrong.
well, if you can sew it this way, but then you'd have to put your top stitching thread in the bobbin because you wanted that's the bobbin
Of
when you're sewing.
course,
Yeah.
of course.
So let's just review that. With top stitching, you're sewing on the right side,
Yeah,
emphasizing your structural detail. In this case, it's a hem.
yeah,
You're holding all the seam allowances flat. So you're sewing through 1, 2, 3 layers here.
yeah.
They're all flat, and you're adding some interest
Oh, I
with
love
laying
it.
fabric. Okay, so that's what you're doing when you top stitch. Now let's have a look at something which is a little bit more interesting.
Oh, I love
Use
this.
that. This is fun. This is a box pleat.
Oh, look, yes. Nice little surprise.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a box pleat. Um, and I decided I wanted to top stitch on both sides of my seam, which is here. This original seam is under here. That's where the seam is.
That's the first one. I see. Yeah.
So that's about 1.125 inches on the double, the box pleat. And then I decided that what I really wanted to do was to top stitch this into a point where the pleat starts to open up here.
I love it. Yeah.
So I took my pattern master and I lined it up with the center of the seam, and I drew this line here.
Oh, yeah.
And then using the guidelines here, I drew, chalked rather, 245-degree lines. So what did that help me with? Well, when I'm traveling down and I get to this chalk line, I put my needle down as close as I can. I might have to shorten the stitch or lengthen the stitch, but I get as close as I can. And then I sew and count the stitches till I get to this
Wow. The middle.
point. So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Down, pivot the work. 1, 2, 3. I know I'm going to be in the right place to come back up and work. And then we've all just seen how we do this hem, right?
Yeah.
So after this is done, then you can sew your hem and look at that. I mean, we're talking about enhancing the structure, making it strong, and adding interest to the detail. So how about that?
Oh, I love it.
So that's
Go on. Yeah.
no, I'm going to let you talk
Oh, well.
because I
I was going to say, I know what some people are thinking now. The dreaded going back to secure. You've done your top stitching, and you're coming back round to meet your. Would you come back round to meet yourself again? I don't know. On a sleeve, maybe. I don't know. You don't go backwards. You can't possibly go backwards, can you, to secure the thread because you're going to get another couple of lines. So what's the way to finish?
you're going to get a squashed spider.
Yeah.
I'll show you how to do that. I'll show you how to do that with this sample.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, lovely.
this is the final thing I'd like to show people at home because I'm going to show you the 3 stages
Yeah.
of what we call the jean seam or the flat felt seam.
Oh, yes. I'm a master of those now because I've done many on my shirts.
Stuart's a master at this. I'll just text you this and you can show it.
Yes, I shall be Master Feld Seam Couturier instead of. I can't really be a tailor, can I? I love it. We giggle, don't we?
The first thing is I've sewn a 3/4 inch seam.
Okay.
Why have I done that? Because you need a bigger seam allowance to do a jean seam or a flat felt seam. So normally a pattern might give you a centimeter seam here, I've just added another centimeter on.
Oh,
So
to be
I made
safe,
it.
absolutely. Yeah.
The second thing you would do, and I hope everyone can see this, is that you're going to trim this seam down to about 5 millimeters. So that
Oh,
side of the
it's barely a whisper. Yeah, right up close.
yeah. And then the other side of the 3/4 of an inch seam, you want to press that in 5 millimeters, okay? And then in effect, you're just going to
Oh,
wrap that around
it's all covered up snug as a bug.
in a rug. There you go. It works so cool with denim because it's a easily sculptural cloth. And then what I've done here, Stuart, is you know, you really want preparation is the key, and you
Absolutely.
want to make sure that you're going to map things out right. So I took a long basting stitch and I secured this.
Oh, I can
Can
see
you
it.
see?
Yes. That's a, yeah, what's that, an inch? Yeah,
Yeah,
each long.
nice
Yeah,
long basting stitch.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know if I'm showing this
I
right.
can see that. Yeah, I can see it. It's white, but put your finger underneath it. Can you put your little finger underneath it?
I tried. There we go.
Oh, there you go. Now, yeah, now we can see.
And that makes everything nice and flat, because one of the things that we have to consider is we have to consider how to make everything flat and secure. So
Yeah.
this basting stitch sets things up so that you turn this around,
Oh,
you can then sew very close to the edge of the seam, which is here, and then you can pick your this is where my basting thread is,
yeah.
and I'm just on the inside of it, just on the inside. So look at how nice that
Oh, it
is
looks beautiful.
because of the prep that we've done. Okay, so that's all I have to say on the samples, and y'all have that now, and you can look back on it. But different ways you can treat top stitching.
Oh, and yes, it's yeah invaluable. And as you say, and I know we've talked about this before, and we're probably going to sound like broken records. It is that I remember the 5 P's that my dad taught me. Proper planning prevents poor performance. I think you could have 6 P's with a rude word in there. Proper planning prevents boom, poor performance. But it's so right. And I know sometimes we don't want to do it. It's like when we're doing wallpapering or something, DIY, those cleaning jobs where you've got to clean it down first or whatever. But in sewing, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? And in the long run, it will make for a better garment. The one thing I never forgot from you teaching me was the stay stitch and how important the stay stitch is. If you like, I think I've done several shirts now. Before you get to do the collar, that shirt can, from doing the yoke or doing the shoulders and stuff, can easily just bloom and bloom and bloom and get wider and wider and wider. If you take that time to put that stay stitch in, that planning and
Yes.
that preparation, it saves a lot of heartache at the
Yeah.
end of the project when you're about to put your collar in and you can't do it because it's suddenly stretched.
It won't fit. When you're working on a curve, part of that curve includes the bias, the most lively part of the cloth, and it will stretch. And it's stretched with just handling. When you cut it and you just handle it, it starts to stretch. And if you're pressing it, it's
Yeah.
it's going to come more out of shape. So you're right. And these things, this preparation takes no time at all. And I always think that there's a huge amount of satisfaction in it because you're setting yourself
Yeah.
up to do a better job.
Yes, and to finish with a wonderful garment rather than rushing it or because we've skipped that prep and then you get frustrated, oh it's not going right, and then you try and do it again, oh it's frustrated, and then you chuck it across the room and you don't finish it.
They said sewing would be fun. Why have I thrown this out the window? And the panels at the top of the 8 panels of this skirt at the top, because the body curves,
Yeah.
and if you were to look at that, the waistband, before you put the waistband on, that skirt would have a curve.
Yeah.
Now, part of that is all on the bias. And I could tell that when I saw the lineup of skirts, a lot of the skirts didn't fit into the waistband. They were pleats, they were tucks. So,
Yeah.
and what you're telling us is exactly
Yeah.
what happens in almost every garment you make where you're dealing with curves. If you're making a quilt, you're on straight and you're on the cross grain. And
Yeah.
well, the cross grain does stretch, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be careful about that. Yeah.
It's trying to get out of that mindset as well, that you feel you're near the end with top stitching. So I know I've been a victim of this. I go, I've just got to top stitch that. And that mentality just means already you've assumed that the top stitching is going to be a very quick job and I've just got to do it. Even the idea of just saying, I've just got to top stitch. But I think we underestimate that whole thing and don't treat it with the respect that it deserves, to leave it to give it a good amount of time. Now, obviously, that was never going to happen on the sewing bee, so it was doomed to fail from the beginning. But yes, you need to leave time to do the top stitching with all that preparation. Because it's the bit that shows, isn't it? It's the bit that will jump and people will go, wow, I love that. Yet we just seem to rush it or think it's just a little thing at the end. And it's not at all, is it?
You need to treat it like the final polish that it is.
Yeah.
And you got to get up from your project, walk around, come back, look at your seams, make sure they're in the proper position to top stitch. Because if you do this wrong, it will offend the eye every time you look at it.
Yeah.
And for people who know, who look at things and they can see a mile away, proper technically trained people, it will offend them as well.
Yeah.
So why do it if it's not going to be right? Do it right or don't do it at all. My mother used to always say.
And that's why I think we felt for the sewers, which is a perfect link to go into the sewers, because it was like, it's a sewing program for time. So they're not going to take the top stitching with with slowness and respect, are they? They're going to be, I'm zooming this top stitching down. So let's go and have a look at the pattern challenge, everyone. So they had to, let's get the picture up first of the pattern. So there it is. If you haven't seen the show, that was the project they had to make, the A-line denim skirt. 8 buttons on there. I can't remember how many panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think must have been 7 or 8 panels. All with, you could see the top stitching there with the dashed line. It's a huge step up from the first one. So where were you going to skim? You've entered this competition. Time is of an essence. You're going to probably just whirl through the top stitching, aren't you? That's where you're going to I just want to get it finished, so I'll just whirl through. But even then, the sewers didn't get it finished. So, because then they've got the 8 buttons to do, haven't they? Let's have a look at that. Here they are.
And also, it would have taken a long time to cut that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, the first thing that hits you is this one with the contrast at the end.
Oh, Janet's.
That does stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had to use denim. They gave them all sorts of denim, coloured denim, as you can see there, as well as just classic. I don't think anyone finished at all. I think the closest one who did win this round, still I think had a button short or bits, maybe the hem not done. So it was a really hard challenge. So I felt for them. And do you know, this is where I really felt for them. Carol, if you were doing a celebratory sort of show of 10 series and let's celebrate the first ever pattern, would you not just celebrate that first pattern and do the first pattern again?
Would you?
Why make it harder?
Exactly. Would you set a task so unreasonable in time that everyone would just make a hash of it and you'd have to pick the best or the worst? That would you do?
I know. And especially as it's a birthday show. You're celebrating a show that we love, because we've got sewing. I must get off my high horse, but we've got sewing on a mainstream TV channel for an hour, and so celebrate it by doing the first pattern again with no souped up things to it, and let the sewers finish with half an hour to go and feel good about themselves. Let them feel good that they've done some really good sewing on national telly, and then let the judges have to work damn hard to choose a winner. That would have been great, wouldn't it?
I love your passion. You know what I thought was rather hilarious and sad at the same time was, if you listen to the opening of the show, which I did, I went back to it and I thought, I listened to Esme, and Esme said, sewing is about self-expression. And then Patrick said, sewing is, you have to have something like a mixed bag of tricks. You have to be genuinely original. You have to have vision. Well, none of those things are useful to you in a timed challenge.
Yeah.
Okay?
Where's the sewing machine talk? Where's your needle and thread to be skilled with your hands?
How about how to read a pattern? How about how to use the accessories of a sewing machine?
Yeah.
The buttonhole attachment is not an easy thing to use.
No.
Why not make this, like you said, that was a brilliant idea. Just give everyone a simple skirt to make where they're all going to shine.
Yes. Yeah.
And then here we are, we're starting off year 10.
Indeed.
Because actually, if I was in that lineup, I would have thought, I'm in danger.
Yeah. Well, and they could have finished it with balloons and yay, cheers to series 1, cheers to 10 years on. Whoa, we all made something. But you won, and because the judges had to really nitpick at the top stitching because you gave them time for it. And then it wouldn't have felt like a damp squib, but we got to this and poor old Tig on our other channel, he said he thought all 12 were going to get kicked off and a whole new 12 were going to be shipped in. Let's have a look at them close up. Without naming any names, we're just going to go through some of the close-up shots, and you can perhaps guide us through some of the errors that were seen, probably because of that time.
Yeah, so here's one with a lot of pleats of the skirt going into the waistband, and also it looks like this is wrapping left over right, which you can do that, but it's not what the directions told you to do.
Okay.
That's the blue one.
Yeah, and of course the blue one and the grey one have got no buttons either.
No buttons. The pink one is wrapping correctly.
Yeah.
And it looks like the buttons are never going to line up.
Oh.
That's why this person didn't even bother.
Yeah.
And
also the pink one, I think they touched on it during the show. She's got another seam line there that I think she'd obviously sewed and has unpicked and hasn't unpicked all the thread properly, has she?
Oh, I see. So she's top stitched too far away for her 5 mil and then had to unpick it, but didn't even have time to unpick it.
I know. It looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and look at the top of the waistband. That's probably a simple folded edge.
Yeah.
Where the bottom of the waistband is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of fabric. So that's not easy to control.
No.
Okay.
Oh, that's
oh dear. Oh dear.
Oh, button lining up. We've got a question about that later on, so we're going to come to that question. But yes, they've put the button in, and then the button hole is nowhere near the button.
Yeah, and it's a vertical buttonhole when it should be a horizontal button. Oops.
Oh no! But the top stitching though, that's a very fine stitch. I suppose you can technically use any stitch, but you like a longer stitch.
I do. Yeah. Yes, about 8-9 stitches per inch. Yes, if you can get that.
Yeah.
Just almost go to the basting stitch on your domestic machine. Oops. So so here's this is the legitimate problem with setting up the buttonhole attachment, because you don't really know where the buttonhole is going to start unless you set that attachment correctly. Yeah. So it looks like that was a surprise when we put that first buttonhole in, that it extended beyond the placket to the left there. So maybe this person just thought, oh, forget it. The buttonholes are never going to line up.
Yeah.
And maybe the buttonholes should have been the color of the denim, not the top stitching.
And in an ideal world, what would we do? We would get the scrap denim and mock up a placket and then just run that through the buttonhole maker on the machine, so you know where it's going to start and finish, wouldn't you? But
That's a very good
obviously
idea.
they're in a competition. They can't do that.
Yep.
Oh,
Oh
I
dear.
know.
Okay, so something has,
I think this.
I've never used those little clips in sewing.
Oh, I love them in patchwork. I think the sewer got confused of where this was. I think thought it was at the bottom and cut the band the wrong way or something. Ooh.
Oh, okay. So, right. So I'm pointing at the screen like you can all see.
Now,
I,
go on.
right.
Yeah,
Okay. And again, yeah, is that the same buttonhole we looked at before, which extended
yeah, I
beyond
think
the front?
so. Let's go back to the
And
close up.
again,
That one.
gathering into the waistband there. And oh, I see. She thought the
Oh,
top, she treated the top of the band like the
I
bottom of
think
the
so.
band.
Yeah, I think that's what she said.
So she lost an inch
Yeah,
and a half on the hem. Now this one kind of sits well
doesn't it?
over the, yep. It's left over right, which is not what the pattern said, but her top stitching looks good. And her buttonholes, are they real buttonholes or are they just slashed? Anyway, it looks like they
Some
fit the space
some
for
had
the
just
button.
slashed them. They didn't even get time to do the actual buttonhole, did they? Oh dear. This was brave. White denim with black
Oh,
contrast top stitching.
true enough. Yeah, absolutely right. That is the highest contrast you can get. But yeah, black on white. And did we get one buttonhole done? And I mean that, oh dear. I can see a second buttonhole below. So they made two
Yeah,
buttonholes, but not at the
I
top.
know.
That's
It's just
why didn't they?
heartbreaking, isn't it? Now, and obviously they've all struggled, so it's not just one or two. So maybe, oh, let's get rid of that. We've seen, oh yeah, look, there's, oh, not even, yeah. Oh, this one here though is the winner. This is, I'm getting learning names. Pasha. She got
Mm,
closest to finishing with the hems done and 7 buttons done.
that looks in comparison, that looks pretty darn good,
Yeah,
doesn't it? She's gone as far forward as you can go. And the top stitching looks even,
yeah.
it looks flat,
It's hard because
as
we
the
haven't got
center.
a close up, but yes. But there you go. And I think we all felt a little bit, like a, what do you call it? Like you've let off a balloon and it's gone. We all felt deflated. Like, I think the whole audience went, "Oh wow, well, that was a round and a half. No one got anything finished. So therefore, we all then knew it's not the sewer's fault. We were all then blaming the producers, and then there's me saying, "Why did they do that? Why did they just not choose a basic pattern?" And then they could have all had a lovely time, and the judges would have had to work hard. Imagine that, having to really judge who
I know
celebrate good work rather than
are
oh
absolutely right. And that's the word I thought of is why.
yeah
It is somebody said, make this skirt in 3 hours. I'd go, what for? How come? Why?
yeah.
Why? So they all went into the transformation challenge thinking, what?
Hey, indeed. Well, just scrap it because any of you could have gone. I suppose that might have taken away the nerves because they were like, well, none of us finished really, so we we might as well just forget pattern challenge completely. So let's just do 2 rounds rather than 3. That's what I would have
That's
done.
true. That's the good side of it, isn't
It's
it? They
well,
were
you
like,
have
well,
to,
I
but
was bad as everyone else.
yes,
But
but
that's not the word. It's not their fault.
it's absolutely, and I just think that's where I just think something was missed there. If we were being really picky in the production team, sorry, production team, but I hope you think we're doing this respectfully. That I think you've missed something there. You could have just chosen
I
that
agree.
the same pattern because it was 10 years ago. We can't remember it, though I know we can watch it on iPlayer, but we wouldn't have gone, oh God, this again, would we? And do you know what? Even if we did, I don't think even if it was more recent, I think we would have just gone, oh great, yeah, we can compare to see the sewers on how good they are. But there we are.
I mean, a simple thing made
Yeah,
beautifully is a thing of
yeah,
beauty, and admire it. You
yeah,
stand in front of it, and you go, "Wow, look at that."
yeah.
Instead, it
I know.
was,
And I think the whole nation would have gone, wow, too. I love this programme, rather than, oh, this is just, moaning. But anyway, so after we've done the tutorial and then looked at whichever round we're looking at, we hand it over to you for some questions. So at the end of every show of the Sewing Bee, which is Tuesday night, I'll do a post on YouTube and Instagram, and you have an opportunity to drop your questions and I'll put them to Carol. And I did that after the show, and we got a couple of questions, Carol. So, are you ready?
What do I need?
You will need some buttons at some point.
Kind of buttons.
Oh, right. Well, let me read you the question and then you can get rummaging. So this is Shari. Can you remember Shari? She did some, from Canada. She'd done some masterclasses with you at Practical Stitches on YouTube. You must go out and check her channel. She's a sewer. She does live sewing. She makes fabulous garments. You must do that. Go and subscribe because if you like joining in with live sewing chat, then that's a great one. So she says, what is the difference between 2-hole and 4-hole buttons? Now, audience, before you start shouting, well, it's obvious. It may be, but actually, I'm like thinking, well, is there a rule? Like, do you only put a 4-hole button on a shirt, and do you only put a 2-hole button on a waistcoat? So, if it is that basic an answer, let us know, Carol. But otherwise, there is never a question too daft or too silly or too basic, because you remember everyone is at different levels here. We can have experienced sewers for years and years, and we can have beginners, so we're all in it together. How are you getting on, Carol? Have you got some buttons?
I've got some things here. Hang on. Okay, well, let me just see. Let me just get one more thing.
Okay. So while she's finding some buttons, so you pop your questions. You can always email us too at stuart@thewoolpatch.com, or just drop it in to last show. There are a multitude ways you can get your questions across, and it doesn't necessarily have to be dedicated to the show's topic. Like if you're doing some shearing, for example, and you're really stuck, well, you know you've got Carol here, Master Tailor Couturier, who can help you out. So it could be on a project that you're working on. So drop in any question. Right.
Okay, well, I've got a few, and then I can be prepared for these questions.
Yes, I could give them to you in advance. That would probably help, wouldn't it? Though there's something kind of nice about doing it on the hoof like this. Right. Even though we did technically, for those who might have caught the show before with our technical challenge, right. That's the beauty. We record live. Even though it's recorded, we don't stop and edit. Right, let's go to Carol Cam. Oh, look, yes. Oh, what have you got there?
Now, I've got a 4-hole button.
Yeah.
It's just 4 holes. I have some 2-hole buttons. Okay, let's go.
Okay, so let's do that first answer. Is there, what was the question again? I've forgotten. What is the difference between a 2-hole and a 4-hole button? Is it just the button holes, or are there rules?
A 4-hole button has 4 holes.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
A 2-hole button has 2 holes. That's where let's start there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, is there then a rule, a silly rule for you can only put a 4-hole button on a shirt, or you can never put a 2-hole button on a shirt? Are there anything like that?
No, you do whatever you like.
Oh, good.
Technically, a shirt button. Here's a shirt button, the tiny.
Oh yeah.
Shirt buttons are 4 holes, and you can put a 2-hole button on a shirt. It's not a problem.
Oh, okay. Good.
Design whatever you want. No, there's no rules. So that's the answer to that question. Just maybe this would be interesting. Can you see these 2 buttons?
I can.
Here?
I'm zooming in.
This is a center front button of a jacket. This is a tailoring button. It's made of horn. This is a polished horn button. This button is about 5/8 of an inch in diameter. This one is about 1/2 an inch. This is for the center front of the jacket. This is for the cuff.
Ah, okay.
these are fashioned beautifully. They're no problem taking 4 drilled holes. Sometimes, as within like a shell button, and there's some beautiful ones. I mean, look at this.
Oh, oh, oh! I'm
Are these
loving
all?
them.
Look at that. They're all 2 hole, and I think it's a more delicate,
Yeah.
fiberless mother of pearl. This is an Italian button,
Oh, of course.
and
Nothing but
it's
the best.
easier to manufacture, and it's safer because there's less breakage. If you were to try to put 4 holes in this mother
Yeah.
of pearl, you might, they might all merge into one
Are they all
big
mother of
hole.
pearl? Oh, they would look really
Yeah,
cool on a baby garment rather than some, dodgy old
these are
plastic.
yeah, and these are beautiful. These buttons are just stunning. I love these so much. But again, they're either 2 hole or they're buttons with a shank. You
Oh,
see,
yes. I call them mushroom buttons.
that's a mushroom button. Okay, thank you, Stuart. Here's 2 more mushroom buttons. Black tie, and then this is just a plastic one. But it's easier to manufacture a more delicate
Yeah.
button with more holes. So I've got here a mother of pearl, which is a larger button, and that has 4 holes. It can take it.
Yes. It looks thicker
And
too. Is it thicker? Can we see it side on?
yeah,
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
it definitely is a bigger button than this one.
Brilliant.
So
Okay.
that's you could do whatever you want. There really are no rules, but I would say in tailoring,
Yeah.
the tradition is to use a 4 hole button.
Okay.
So the center front and then the top.
Fabulous.
And then for a shirt button. And I guess you get a better balance because you have 4 threads going into the back, and then when you wrap your thread around it to create this shank, which you call your mushroom
Yeah.
button, your curtain shank, which all these have, then you get
Oh, got pickle.
pieces. Get you get a
Pickle them up.
space. I know. You get a space between
Oh,
the
yes.
placket,
Yeah.
okay? And then there's room for the button to go through the buttonhole because there's a shank on it. And then that solves that problem, okay, of having to line something up perfectly.
Yeah. Because,
Because if you sew a button on with a machine,
oh, yeah.
there's no shank.
No.
Or there's a little shank because you can't, you, it's just going to go down, up, down, up, down, up, and then it's going to
Yeah.
stop. And then the machine can't wrap
No,
it,
no.
wrap, around. We haven't perfected a machine
And
yet.
actually, that leads us.
Pick up my button.
You pick the buttons up. It leads us nicely onto the next question, actually, which is from where are we? Thanks, Shari, for that. This is from Becky via YouTube. Is there a surefire way to get buttons and buttonholes to match up? I tried sewing a 4-hole button on with a machine, but got very muddled up with what the back threads were doing. Oh, I feel for you there. Any tips? But actually, they then say, I gave up and did them by hand. And actually, I actually think that was probably the better thing anyway, don't you think? Just doing it by hand?
Sew your buttons on by hand. So it sounds to me like there's 2 things going on here with this question. One is, why did the machine jam up and create a squashed beetle
Yeah.
on the bottom of the button? And then moving on from that, how would you match up the buttonhole to that button? So there is a way. I'm thinking if I'm doing shirts or a long button line,
Yeah.
sometimes what I do is I'll center the plackets one on top of the other, like that skirt we just
Yeah.
saw in the pattern shop. Right over left as worn
Yeah.
for a woman. Center the plackets. I would always make the buttonholes first. Make sure they're perfectly evenly
I'm just going
spaced.
to get my shirt.
Slash the buttonhole. You got a shirt?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where my buttons are going to go. So I've only just made the button holes.
Okay. Good. Good. You've done, and they're vertical.
It always wants to focus on my face. Yes.
Very nice. Oh, that's your. I recognize that.
Oh yeah, that's my hand dyed shirt out of a tablecloth. Everyone. So I've now made the buttonholes. So what have I got to do next with these?
So what I would do is I would center that placket left over right
Okay.
on top of the other. So your buttonhole placket goes on top of your button placket. And when you're happy with the alignment, get yourself a straight pin.
Yeah. Oh, where's...
And put a pin through the precise center of your buttonhole.
Yeah. Just getting there. Right.
So I finished picking up my.
So left over right. Yeah.
Right. The buttonhole goes on top of the button placket. There's nothing on the button placket now. That's what we're going to mark. So have you got a pin to hand?
Considering we had some tech issues, I did have a pin here before, but oh God, where could that be? It's probably on the floor now. Right. I'm just going to go over to my machine.
This is a really easy way, and you can mark one button at a time. You can mark them all.
Let's re-plug in. So, and then put the pin
right through the center of your
buttonhole.
The center of the length of your buttonhole. Is your buttonhole is about 5/8, 3/4 of an inch long? Okay, so you need to put your pin right through the center. Go all the way through the button placket.
All right. Oh, I see. Oh God, that seems so obvious now, doesn't it?
Yeah. Peel off the buttonhole. Peel the buttonhole off the pin, keeping the pin into the button placket. Peel that off, and that should be your mark.
My mark
and
there.
That should be the center of your placket.
There.
Yeah. There, that's it. Okay.
And then I just have to do that another 7 times.
And it's nice if you can put it over a sleeve board or something that has some padding in it.
Okay.
And you can just put your pin all the way through, hop along each buttonhole, putting that pin right through the center, peeling them all off, and then you should have a line of like soldier pins.
Absolutely. That makes.
And then you can sew one button on, and then redo it, recheck it. Sew your second one on, recheck it.
Makes so much sense. Now, I'm thinking for Becky, let's rewind even more. These guys making the holes in the first place, how do you make sure they're all the same distance apart to start off with?
Well, okay, so you've got a buttonhole attachment, or are you making them by hand, or are you zigzagging? How are you making your buttonholes?
I'll probably, let's say I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do it on the machine, but how do I get that, how do I work the placement between that and that before I even go to the machine?
Right. Well, you can look at a sample shirt and see.
Okay.
Generally, the buttonholes are about 3.5 inches apart. I'm wearing a shirt. This is good. So you have your top neck button.
Yeah.
And then the second button is generally quite
close. It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And then your third button is about 3.5 inches. Now this is a lady shirt. Oh, how perfect is this? So, okay, this is 3.5 inches apart.
Okay.
So you go from the top of your buttonhole to the top of the next buttonhole should be 3.5 inches.
I'm guessing if you're following a sewing pattern of a shirt, that they would give you the placket and have a little dot and a dot and a dot and a dot, and they would mark where you make it anyway, I presume, would they?
They'll do that, or they'll just have a placket pattern, and then they'll have a button placement pattern.
Oh, I see.
So that would be separate. So when your shirt is done, you cut that out, and that would be net. The button placement pattern will be net. So you just push it up to the collar stand, that down to the hem. It all should fit in net, and then you can just mark your buttonhole position. And actually,
so they are, Becky. Hope that helps. You're going to be doing it by hand, I'm afraid. And that actually, I think the rest of Shari's question was that should there be an uneven amount of buttons on a garment, such as a shirt? 7 buttons, not 6.
Right.
Count. How many have you got on yours? I'm not going to count.
That's interesting.
I'm not going to count on mine.
2,
1, 2, 3.
I've got 7,
You've got 7. Oh, I've got
including
6.
the
Oh
top.
no.
Wow, that's really interesting.
I've done it wrong though, probably. I would have thought in my simple brain, odd, like they do on MasterChef, everything's in threes, isn't it? 3 stylish roast potatoes or 3
Yeah,
chips.
triangle. Well, I think there's something aesthetically
Yeah,
pleasing. We don't understand why,
I
but
agree.
I think an odd number is it just sits better artistically. But you know, if it's a long skirt and it calls for another button, like the pattern challenge, it
Yeah.
was a long skirt. So, you know, maybe it calls for an even number of buttons. You know, who knows? You can always play around with the spacing. Sometimes what they're doing with the newer shirts, making them quirky, or they're putting 2 buttons like an inch apart, and then skip 3
Oh,
inches, and then 2 more, and then yeah. So I don't know. It's
I
whatever
I
you
think you're
like.
right.
You know,
The my flower shirt at the back that Colin made for me. He was originally going to do them because he likes symmetry. So he was going to do. Let me get it for you.
that's summery yet Christmassy as
Look at
well.
that. Here we are. He was going to originally do them 1, 2, 3 symmetrical down the front and do 1, 2, 3 because he said he likes symmetry, and I was like, ooh, I don't know whether that looked a bit too formal, the symmetry, the symmetricalness of it. I said, oh, can you not put them on the as we say here in
Oh,
Suffolk?
yeah, yeah.
So he did. So we've got outside and then slightly on the inside, and then this one slightly on the inside, and so they're sort of uneven,
I
but they're kind of also, it kind of works, doesn't it?
works totally. Yes, and then you've got on your left sleeve as worn. You've got the flower quite
Yeah,
front,
yeah,
and then on the right sleeve, the sleeve that's closest to you,
yeah,
that is
on
more toward the
that,
middle of the sleeve. So
absolutely.
yeah,
And then
I really like that
and
placement.
then have we got some on the back? Of course we have.
Oh,
Look at that.
oh, oh, that's
Isn't
genius.
it stunning? And he did all this. So the garment was made first out of red crochet, and then he crocheted the flowers separately and the leaves separately, which he was cursing at me about, and then he sewed them all down. It is phenomenal. If you,
What
I know
effort?
you'd like to see the inside. Do you want to see the inside?
Oh yes, please.
How
Oh my gosh, look at
And
that.
actually,
So
isn't
that's
that quite
so
discreet? There's not loads of threads there. It's so flat. You,
very efficient job
it's
in doing it.
phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And this is where I love doing these shows because we. Oh, I come sit back down again. That was a bit. We
Okay.
get to celebrate everyone's creativity. There are so many clever people out there with so much experience. The wealth of experience that you've got, Carol, of over the years of working with people and picking up tips from that tailor and that tailor and that tailor. And as you then say, you work out what works for you, and then you might even adapt it even more. And you can't put a figure or a price on that, can you?
Can't. And I think I love doing these tutorials because it there's so many ways of
Yeah.
doing something. And at the top stitching one is interesting because they take away part of your sight line of what you're doing. You've got to invent
Yeah.
something. So you can use tape or chalk or basting threads or a staple gun, whatever works. And I just like explaining what it is that you're
Yeah.
doing when you're doing something, and then you can make it your own. But I think this is what's missing with the sewing bee, and this is why we're
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
This is to strike against the sewing bee. It's an entertainment show. People love it. We love it. But what is missing is the
Yeah.
fundamentals that you should probably be learning, and then you can go and break the
Yeah.
rules.
I love that. Oh, break the rules and make something phenomenal. And they are. We need to end there because I just don't think we can say anything better than that. So well done, you. So there's our program. That is all gathered up. So if you're new to the program and you're watching it for the first time, then I hope you enjoyed it. There's more of it. 9 more weeks. Next week is Sports Week. So what do we think we're going to have? Cricket jumpers, are we? Or spandex, lycra?
Ripstop nylon.
I would. Oh, yes. You did a good tutorial on that a couple of years ago, didn't you, with the Ripstop?
I love that project. Well, listen, if you send your questions in, and thank you for your questions, this is the good part of the program. I'll be better prepared. I won't have to rummage.
Oh, I like that though. We got to see the worker in the studio. I loved it. And considering we did a take yesterday, which didn't go too well, I think we've trumped ourselves on this take. Oh, Carol, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, everyone. And we will see you next week for Sports Week. Can't wait. Cheers all. Bye-bye.